fact that living close enough to you that you and I have had ongoing discussions on the fact that if Hussein had convinced the world powers that he wanted to cooperate and we all thought everything was smoothing out, what you had said was that if this hadn't happened in the last couple of weeks, that in 2 years he would have had the nuclear capability to do just what you said he did.
Right. And just to clarify, the rough 2-year period of time from now and into the future, I mean, because of the names that we've given, that did not mean that he would have Tomahawk cruise missiles.
But he would have had.
But he would have nuclear deployable capability, nuclear deployment capability.
So what you've been telling me in the last few months is that what's happening now.
In other words, from other stories and situations that I've been directly involved in, and you, Carol, and many other people know that there are nuclear devices, nuclear bomb-type devices existing in the Middle East right now. Crude, large-size things. With that technology, it's usually a very short period of time, 1 or 2 years, that they can condense that with the proper instrumentation and capabilities and so on to the size and weight of being able to be deployed by mobile units, either trucks, ships, large planes, and so on. And this was, at this point in time, that future scenario, as Saddam Hussein was, in his terms, progressing, in the next 2 years, he would have had this capability. So it was a close call back a few years ago that he would have had nuclear capabilities by this time. That did not take place, thank God. Right as of this time, he does not have that capability, thank God. And we, the people of the world, the United Nations, the Allied forces, are stopping it. We prayed for divine intervention. We prayed for his attitudinal change. His attitudinal change did not take place. And that hurts a lot of people's feelings, mine in particular. It did not take place. We are not failures for that. We tried hard. Famous phrase by, I can't think of the name of the guy, many years ago. Speak softly and carry a big stick. Now, right. And, that doesn't normally fit in to lovey-dovey talk of New Age type, Om Shanti, healing services and things like that. But you know me pretty well, and you know that, the last thing I want to do is hit anybody. The last thing I would prefer to, the first thing I would prefer to do is hug anybody. Anybody. Absolutely anybody. The person that I would least typically like to be with, I will meet and hug genuinely, honestly. Okay, so I am that person. And at the same time, I've really been cautioning every time I talk, I caution, there will still be chaotic situations where you individually and collectively are going to have to decide appropriate measures that do not suit you, do not suit your new image, your new personality, your new spirituality. And that we are carnivorous beings. We are, and those we're participating in entropy. So we're not excluded from that. Those we have to kill plants and animals to subsist. And we're still part of that. Not on the nitrogen cycle yet.
So what you were telling me was that what we're going through right now is a healing process of the planet.
Yes. I mean, as horrible as that seems, like, say, wait a minute, the very thing we're avoiding, we're participating in.
It's like when you have a little child, you don't say, don't hit your brother and then give him a swat. It's like we're in the middle of saying, don't hit your brother and give him a swat. Mm-hmm. It's just, one is a priest from out in the Milwaukee area, I think I was talking to recently, and I told him what you had shared with me about protecting your child, or the protection of, or the preciousness of life that has to sometimes be protected. And I guess I'm going to hit you with this. Maybe I did on the phone already. He pretty much said, well, the only one law in the whole world for all people is that you're responsible for what you do. Mm-hmm. When you stand ultimately before the light,
Yes.
You're responsible for what you do. And so that means those of us who are having sons over there, as you do, and husbands and brothers and all of that, and we're praying, thanking them for protecting the world or whatever. They're still, they and we, because we back them up, are responsible for this war machine that's going on that will ultimately save the planet.
Spiritual level, on that ultimate level, every single one of us is responsible for the oil slick in the Persian Gulf. We're responsible for Saddam Hussein being the way he is. On that level we are. We're responsible for everything we do, and I certainly learned for everything we even think. And the answer is yes to that. There are many levels to that. And down on this mundane level, earthly level, is that you eat and drink to exist. And in doing that, you're killing. You're killing biological life forms, you're killing sometimes animals, you're certainly killing vegetables and so on. But that's right and just. It's the scheme of things. Well, on a certain gross level, which is maybe a little more intensive than eating plants and knowing that you're killing plants to eat them, and those in the realm of entropy, on a very intensive and gross level, there is that malice, greed, ego is not unusual. It is the norm for many, many people. On a mundane level, it is in all of us. Every single one of us that I have hugged and that I have met in the last 12 years, including myself, have a measurable degree of greed and or ego. And we try to control it. We try to be aware of it, first of all. I would say close to half of the people, certainly in the United States, are not even aware of this phrase ego. They think it's only egotistical ego. They don't know about the spiritual ego and how it feeds itself and how it motivates us, how it sometimes overwhelms us. And that exists. We haven't erased that. We've had attitudinal changes. We have recognition of love, peace, and joy, and we wish for that. We want that. A majority of the people have not dealt with that in their own lives. Do I still own a handgun? Now, you know that I do. You know that it's used as a horrendous dry humor joke. The fact that many times I've tried to sell them, and others, say, this is a symbol. But then I stopped to think, this yin and the yang. It's a symbol of who I was back then. I never hunted with them. I certainly never shot anybody. I was a target shooter. I was very good at it. And it was fun. And it was a bona fide sport. And I did that. Now, I don't do that. I even enjoy firing them with the kids once in a while on the farm. All right? Many people disagree with even that. And I try to have that balance. Should I throw them out? That's a bona fide thing to do. I mean, if I'm going to preach all the guns should be put down, we should love one another, should I start by getting rid of my handgun, my shotgun? And then I think, wow, now wait a minute. I have affected people in very strange and unusual ways by still having possession and ownership of an instrument that can be used for both gaining my food in certain circumstances, those righteously, those for subsistence, as well as ultimate militaristic protection, God forbid, or even ultimately, disgustingly, even the thought of using it for killing or maiming or hurting. And as oftentimes as I've gone to sell them and turn them in, throw them away, give them away, and of course I've had to deal with all of that, I think, no, it's just not the right time. Now, I'm not saying that it's not the right time because I might need them or use them. I'm saying psychologically and spiritually to a degree, but mostly psychologically, who am I kidding? And this is something that can I own and possess and maintain control of? And is that a lesson for a lot of the people that are in, what's the Rifle Club? American Rifle Association?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lynne knows. National Rifle Association.
Yes, right. National Rifle Association. In other words, can I go to a National Rifle Association picnic and first of all fit in? The answer is yes. I talk about target shooting, the hunting that I did with my father and so on. And do I fit in? Am I there to convince them to lay down their arms and be a more loving person? No. It's not my job. Your job is not necessarily to convince people and make them see the light. Your job is to show by who you are, by your character, by your characteristics, and by your actions. Now, it's almost as though I'm contradicting myself because some people will say, Tom, but you own a gun. And I go, yeah. And they'll be bothered by that. You know? And those people don't need to have that or see it or use it to have an attitudinal change or to progress. In fact, you can almost pass them off as they're on their way. They're okay. The problem with those people is they get, it's a phrase, I don't want to say they live in a dream world, but they get what? You know, it's almost as though they're living a lifestyle of wish fulfillment only, and they're blinded. They've got blinders on to the reality of they might have very well changed, but they still live in a society and in organizations and governments and so on that are based on materialism, greed, and ego. Let me put it this way. Do you pay your taxes? You know, I mean, yes, you pay your taxes.
Yeah, I've been so kind of confused with my old thinking and what's happening now. I've always been so against taxes going into the military. And now what I'm watching is that because it did, they're almost surgically taking out things instead of people. And I never realized that that's it.
There's many things that we're going to have to recognize that we here at home should, you know, but that we should recognize. This is a terrible thing that's taking place over there. I deplore the whole thing. If there was a way that I could involve myself and change it to a better way, I would. I was talking briefly with one of the guys at the highway department of average intelligence, pretty well learned, watches enough television, the type of like the news and so on. So, I don't want to tell you that he was intellectual and intellect, nor was he retarded or dumb or any way, shape, or form. But it was quite average. He was an average individual, a guy. This guy friend of mine. And to make it real simple and short, what I told him, because he was arguing with me about the righteousness of being over there, and I explained to him that my father did not get forced to speak German. He could have if he wanted to, but he wasn't forced to speak German. That I did not have to speak Japanese. And as things are going right now, my son Tim will not be forced to speak Iraqi. Now that's an awfully simplistic way of looking at it, but when world events on a scale larger than your neighbor or your child or your spouse takes place, it should and sometimes has to be addressed for the purposes of survival. We're not talking about intervening in Kuwait because of oil. We're not talking about we don't like Muslims. We're not talking about this guy hurt somebody and we're the righteous, arrogant people that are going to go and punish him. A lot of people have that attitude, but as the government has stated, and with the United Nations resolutions that we're pushing to the limit, I'll admit, we're there to take care of more than that. We're there to facilitate the survival of nations, not the survival of an oil field or the survival of one people over another locally. We're talking about the survival and the stopping of a Hitler, a Japanese empire, and I'm referring to the the World War II type empire. God bless any similar phrase or people or modern people that still might consider themselves of the Japanese empire, if you want to call it that. And of course, the people of Iraq. The people of Iraq are people.
Right.
I mean, they're victims as
And
your
when this
victims
is all
are.
over, they should have their own ways intact as well. Their own culture.
I know it's unlike, now again, like, you drop back to World War II, the intentions were to get involved and save this and save that. This is the first war where there is a very methodical, careful plan for minimizing. The emphasis is to minimize the loss of human life. There's never been another conflict where that's been a consideration. Even the carpet bombing that is taking place from B-52 bombers, it is a minimum. They are not carpet bombing populated areas. I mean, trust my knowledge on this, and of course verified by what we have experienced in the news as well as reports and so on. B-52 bombers are not carpet bombing. They're just indiscriminately making holes in the ground. They're using that, yes, for some military forces in Kuwait, and this has been pretty well documented already, that this type of carpet bombing from very high altitudes for the purpose of destroying large areas and military personnel in that area. Yes, we are killing some of those people. I'm sorry for that. I wish there could be another way. But in view of the circumstances, it is for survival.
Of the plan.
Ultimately for the planet, yes. And if this, and it is simplistically, if this is not stopped now, in a matter of a few years, I mean a couple of years, a few years, not 10 years, not more than 10 years, not the next big generation or anything else, just a matter of months, it will be, it could conceivably be unstoppable. By unstoppable, I mean, yes, we could win a war. I know that if Saddam Hussein had nuclear capabilities and then got ultimately offensive and went through Kuwait and started into Saudi Arabia, and of course, which is obvious that he would, predictably that he would, the highest of probability that he would, in that short period of time, it would be stoppable, but there will be irreversible or something like irrevocable damage. And of course, even if simplistically you only want to think in terms of nuclear, having a Chernobyl times 100.
Well, let me ask you two questions. Basically, you and I discussed, you told me that if it ever got to the point, you foresaw that the war had to happen. But you said that if it came down to ground troops going in, that really isn't necessary. That's the greed and ego of the politicians and wanting to make money out of the war and that sort of thing. That we do have the capability to not reduce this war to the ground troops going in, the tanks and the Boy Scouts and all of that. That's one thing. Do you foresee now that we've gotten into this, that is going to happen?
Okay, first problem with that is the term, okay? Ground forces, if you mean army tanks and ground forces going trench by trench and so on, yeah. And what I said, I still go by, I still feel quite adamant. I've never used that word. Quite adamant about that. And what I said to you still holds. Ground forces mean more than army troops with rifles running toward booby traps and foxholes. Okay? What I see right now, the tactics that they're using, the actuality of what's taking place right now, is that there are ground forces already in Kuwait, already in Iraq, and that they're being used. It is the image of World War I, World War II, Vietnam, certain parts of Korea, the Korean conflict, of rifles, bayoneted rifled men running toward other men, shooting them. All right, I'm not even going to deny that an event like that will take place where there will be a man seeing another man and needing or having to shoot for survival and military overthrow. There's a difference in terminology, and of course, this conflict in the technical hardware that's being used. My son is working with ground forces. My son has already done certain things on both sides of the border of those countries. That's not the same as, in fact, he doesn't even have a gun or any weapon of destruction. He deals with the electronics, okay? And I mean, I'm not painting him pretty just because he's my son or anything. He happens to be what he does as a job, as his employment. He may be ordered to pick up a gun, and he will follow those orders. That's the type of person he is, and so on. There are ground troops. There are vehicles that have gone across the border already toward military personnel of the Iraqi army. Right? That's already taken place. It's taking place, and it will take place. So when you hear on the television and reports that ground forces are moving in and cautioning everybody about holding on to this image of people shooting other people in foxholes and trenches.
You're guarding,
I'm
warning them against that. That's
I'm
not
warning,
what's
and let me
happening.
put it this way. The highest of probabilities is that is taking place as of this time, whatever this day is over there. It is taking place. It already has taken place, and it will take place on a large scale. Okay? If Saddam Hussein does not politically, and it's in his capacity as the leader, give up Kuwait, he will be driven out. If it gets down to the last few rifles in buildings or in underground trenches, they will have to be rooted out, invited, coaxed, and ultimately pushed or forced out. The answer to that is yes. If it comes to that, they will be. With the new developments of massive planes going into Iran, that's both good and bad. I'm afraid that it's more bad than anything. Militaristically speaking, and the old Tom Sawyer would say, send a message to Iran to they might want to recommend put them at the far end of the runway because we'll be there in 10 minutes. And I don't think that it's right and just to allow that kind of military hardware. I mean, we've already gone in to take the guy's toys away, and now he's salvaging some of his toys, that terrible phrase that I use, meaning some of these fighter jets, and he's harboring and salvaging and wanting to hang on to. That's inappropriate as far as I'm concerned. I have to give in and let the military officials for the next several days deal with that in the way they see fit. I'm not the expert, they are. That's unfortunate. There will be ground troops used, cautioning everybody, don't have the image of these poor, unfortunate young men walking across the sand. I mean, you'll probably even have a videotape of a few men walking on the sand. And it's not like that. I spoke to my son Saturday morning on the telephone.
That's amazing. He's in Kuwait. You spoke to him on the telephone.
Yes. In fact, he had to be very careful how he told Elaine. Elaine questioned him, and how he told Elaine that the location where he was right on the border, which was okay for us to tell a few weeks ago, or I didn't mean to say a few weeks ago, a week or so ago. However long the number of days are, the other day ago, that it was on the border, right by about 50 miles south of Kuwait City, he was able to tell us that he's moving to another location. Well, another location won't be farther south, it'll be farther north. I mean, notice he didn't say that, and that's not official, he can't be blamed for that. Notice we have to, a very logical deduction or assumption that it'll be farther north. And he is among some of the ground troops. He's in several different kinds of vehicles. He's not walking across the sand, although he does have a pet scorpion. Should put this in the videotape. He found a scorpion, so he's keeping it as a mascot. Wouldn't you if you're a 22-year-old Rambo?
Crazy story.
And it's either blue or green, so that's a nice color, whatever it is. Right, so he's there and he's doing that. Now he's using electronics and so on. There are other people that are in his immediate vicinity that have war weapons, A1M1 tanks, things of that nature. I don't want to. There's some things that I can either assume or know. I don't want to, give too much information either.
Well, hopefully by the time anyone sees this video, it'll all be over. At least we'll be into the maintenance kind of thing. I guess my selfish question for those of us who are planning to be going over to Israel,
Egypt.
Egypt in November of this year, which will be 1991.
Yeah, my opinion is that's up in the air. Now, conceivably, it is very realistic. My eyebrows are even up there. It is realistic that might be a safe trip. All right, now as soon as this coming November, next November, that's a probability. It's not just a possibility; it's a probability at this point. As to how high a probability, I wouldn't wish to answer that right now. It's something that should be monitored. I would personally say, as of this day, right now, continue with those plans. Don't cancel them. Be very cautious about making a financial commitment or something that you can't back out of. But it is realistic that would be a safe trip. I know that the military offensive action would be over with, stopped, and that if it just be monitoring or that horrible phrase mop-up operations might still be continuing, the war aspect of it in all probability should be over with, or at least in such control that, again, the phrase is it would be a safe trip to go.
Well, it's interesting because up until a couple of days ago, I had just been so into the fact that the offensive part of it would be over in March or April, and that we'd be well on our way to the healing process. And
I shared with you prior to this, and I even think it's documented in a videotape, that there was some terminology given by me regarding the first 12 minutes of an offensive action, the next 4 hours, or the first 4 hours, and that military superiority would be accomplished by then. Now, I stated that weeks ago. That took place, and those increments were real, took place, right? So in other words, I'm not just saying I was right, no matter, even though we're continuing on with this conflict and so on. Those things did take place. In the first 12 minutes, there was the electronic warfare that worked. And those systems that were, sometimes they worked, sometimes they don't work. God bless the technology involved, they worked. And as a result, there wasn't airplane versus airplane. And there wasn't 1,000 airplanes shot down on both sides. God bless every one of those humans that fly those planes on both sides. There was not a major loss of life. I mean, this is a terrible thing to say because there was loss of life. People have died over there. People are dying over there. But you're dealing with something that is a national or a worldwide war.